Charles Drace for 360.org. Hi, Charles. You've got a presentation for us, I think, too. Is that right?
Yep. The mics are on. Right. So I've basically got 3 submissions to make. They're very, very simple. They won't take very much time. The first one is that I ask that the Christchurch City Council do an analysis of the effects of global warming, much like the Auckland City Council has done. And I suspect your staff has already read that and are probably familiar with it, but I would like a commitment from the council to do such a wide-ranging study on the future effects for Christchurch and the council and for all of Christchurch, like Auckland has done. That's basically it for that first submission. It's really simple.
Does anyone have any questions then?
What sort of trees were they?
I'm sorry?
What sort of trees were they?
Rainforest. It was a rainforest.
A rainforest.
Could may I ask one to just try and unwrap a bit? Thank you, Charles. So you basically said you'd like us to carry out an analysis of global warming. So if we try and delve deeper, is this IPCC projections? I don't. What are you actually getting at specifically?
Well, you'll see.
Well, I mean, we know the issue, but just to.
Yeah, so you see in your notes a copy of a news article about the Auckland one. And basically the theme of that was that things are, having done the analysis, things are much worse than they had otherwise thought. And so that if Christchurch would do an in-depth analysis like that, they would have a much better idea of what needs to be done, what timeframes need to be included, et cetera.
Hi, thank you. Just very quickly, I think there's a lot of work happening here. It's not that we haven't done any. I think one of the is what you're asking, that you want that work made really clear and public so that people can see what the real impacts of climate change are going to be on the city.
Now that will actually cover my third submission, but yes.
So when you say submission, I mean your name's only once here. So you mean you've got 3 points to make during this one submission? Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Oh, sorry. Well,
I'm just checking on that.
I've interrupted you unnecessarily. Perhaps if you could present your 2 additional points. Sorry, I thought that you were saying that you'd finished your submission. So, yeah. So carry on, please. Okay.
So the first point was to do an analysis like Auckland did. The second one is that the annual plan contains should contain a requirement for all future decisions to be first analyzed for their negative or beneficial effects on global warming, so that a procedure is put in place that an analysis must take place for every major decision. And the third point is the council do much more to publicize to the public the steps they are taking and will take to ameliorate the effects of CO2 and methane output. So the second one is pretty straightforward, but the third one I'd like to discuss just a little bit more. And you've had submissions, and I think that a number of you are favorably responding to the submission to declare a climate emergency, which has come out from Extinction Rebellion and others, and the students. Looking at it from a different point of view, if the council does declare a climate emergency and publicizes that, and continues to publicize the work that they are doing to ameliorate the problems and so on, eventually the public will get on side and they will give you their support. But if it's done in secret or privately or not publicized widely, then the public will never know what's going on. They'll never know how bad things are on the one hand and how good things are in terms of what you're doing on the other hand. So to get the public behind you, you make these broad statements, these strong statements, and then you keep publicizing everything. And an earlier submission I did, I don't know, last year or so, one of you asked me a question, and naturally I didn't think of the proper answer until the next day. That the proper answer to that question was, and it's very relevant to this point, that with the rising sea levels, and I know you're already have done a lot of analysis on that, one of the things that's probably going to happen is an expansion of the estuary. Now, that's going to cause a lot of problem for a lot of people. It's also going to create some opportunities. But if the council were to put up, billboards of what they were doing and why they were doing it, and they were to bring down reporters to report on it, invite them to sessions, have open sessions for the public. This is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and so on. Eventually, the public will start to realize that you're being very proactive and what you're doing is very necessary, and they'll get behind you, and that'll make it much easier to deal with the objectors. So the whole concept of this third point is getting everything as public as you possibly can. Not only how bad it is, but what you're doing. Okay.
Sarah, did you?
Yeah, sorry, just quickly on the second point, which was the climate change lens over all the decision making. We did that in the long-term plan last year. We passed a resolution to that our reporting for decision making should address the impacts of decisions on our climate change commitments, and that reporting system has now been embedded into the organisation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reporting that's being done now all has a climate change lens over it. What we don't have, but we would be good to have, is how that's working, like in a committee meeting or a briefing or something like that, so that people can see how that's working in our committees.
Yeah.
So we've
Need to be
acted
rolled
on
out
that
a bit more.
Well, no, it's there. It's just not very public facing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know about it.
Pauline, Pauline, then Dion,
you.
then Yanni, if we've got time.
Charles, what did you mean when you said you will see estuary expansion? Can you explain?
Well,
on
with
that?
rising sea levels, you've got to have an absorption zone, and that's what estuaries around the world have always done. But our estuary has been built around,
Yeah.
and so as the ocean levels rise, then we need more of a buffer. We need that buffer to protect the surges up the Avon River. We need the buffer to protect from flooding in the event of a big storm, coming in off the ocean, etc. And so we have encroached on our estuaries, and we need to let them come back to where they would naturally be. And that probably means a lot of houses built around them.
Do you mean
Good.
around the entirety? Or
Probably.
The residential red zone in Bexley will help considerably in that regard.
Look it out.
Yeah.
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 But the point of that was that publicizing it gets the public on side.
Yeah. Dion.
Just on the study on the climate effects for Christchurch, do you think it's worthwhile actually us maybe looking at expanding us having the conversation regionally rather than locally? Because, it's good to do these studies, I agree, but we're looking at it in isolation rather than actually everybody's going to be facing the same issues. How about pooling together some of our resources and actually having a proper go at the issues? Or are you really just wanting to look at Christchurch in isolation?
Well, I talked to you, but we also talked to the Environment Canterbury about the same thing. There's a real possibility that after the upcoming elections, we'll get a better hearing from Environment Canterbury on a number of these issues. And seriously,
I forgot my mic.
I think that there's the possibility, a strong possibility, that you'll be able to work better with Environment Canterbury on some of the issues where you haven't been able to come together as well.
Having a regional approach to that, do you think would be more beneficial than just sort of isolating the city itself?
As the regional approach doesn't detract from what you do
No,
yourselves.
obviously, no.
Right.
And one other thing, we're looking at, there's a lot of conversations around a climate emergency, but I'm not really seeing a lot of people talking to us about the biodiversity crisis that the world is facing, and bees and all those kind of things. Are you thinking the climate emergency is part of that, or is there something separate there, or how do we?
Oh, definitely. The studies that are coming out on the biodiversity loss, a lot of that loss is blamed on climate change. but a lot of it is encroaching urbanization, spreading out, agricultural practices, and mining, and all those other types of things as well. It's interesting, the Extinction Rebellion, you chose that word extinction to not only talk about the potential extinction of the people with climate change, but all the other issues that that you've just mentioned. You know,
So we're facing an extinction
biodiversity and so on.
emergency.
Right, so that it's extinction of everything.
So it's an extinction emergency rather than just climate.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just that climate is the
Yeah,
main
but-
focus
But
of
actually,
it
the way
right
we're
now.
using the planet is actually probably having more of an effect. But yeah.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much, Charles. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Take care.